the second year, I get a phone call and someone said to me, "Oh my God, do you know that J-Lo is wearing your jumpsuit on the cover of her album and it's plastered all over Times Square?" I was like, "No." And the label was right on the pocket, plastered everywhere. The next thing I know, my phone was ringing off the hook. I got a phone call from SNL and they said to me, "We're doing a skit with J-Lo and Mango, and they're going to be fighting over your jumpsuits. So we need you to custom make a jumpsuit for J-Lo and Mango with the back cut out because we don't
Oh
want it to
my
bust
God.
open while they're rolling around on the floor fighting over your jumpsuit."
Bad decisions. Bad decisions. Bad decisions.
Welcome back to the Bad Decisions podcast, where we lead not with celebrity, but with story. I'm your host, Scott Nathan. Today's guests are Daniella Clarke and Barbaranne Wylde, host of a great podcast called the Honest AF Podcast. I'm going to do some brief bios in alphabetical order. Daniella Clarke is a fashion designer and entrepreneur renowned by founding the denim brand Frankie B. Born in Nazareth, Israel, she spent part of her early life in South Africa before moving to the United States as a teenager. Her journey into fashion began during her time accompanying her husband, guitarist Gilby Clarke of Guns N' Roses, on tour. Unable to find jeans that matched her desired style, low-rise and form-fitting, she started creating her own. This led to the launch of Frankie B in 1999, named after her daughter, Frankie, who's in a great band called Frankie and the Studs. The brand became iconic for pioneering the low-rise jeans trend of the early 2000s and attracted a celebrity clientele, including Jennifer Lopez, Kate Moss, and Jessica Alba, to name just a few. Under Daniella's leadership, Frankie B exploded as a lifestyle brand, generating over $200 million in annual sales and selling more than 1.5 million pairs of jeans worldwide. Barbaranne Wylde is a music industry veteran, industry executive, and manager, best known for managing the career of her husband, Zakk Wylde, former guitarist of Ozzy Osbourne and founder of Black Label Society. She also helms a multi-million-dollar merchandising company and an organic fair trade coffee company called Valhalla Java. Welcome, ladies.
Hey,
Hello.
thank you. That was quite the intro.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't measure up. I was feeling like, uh-oh.
I think it's pretty good. I think they're both pretty darn impressive from where I'm sitting.
Yeah, fun.
So let's see. So I just want from the top. One of the great curiosities is Hollywood marriages are not generally known for their longevity. But if there's one thing I've noticed, there's nothing stronger than a good one. What's the secret, ladies?
They
Yeah.
travel.
They're never home.
Are you so? Do you never go on road dates with your husbands?
Oh, I definitely do. I mean, it'd be the only way I'd be
Yeah,
able to
you're the
see him.
manager.
Zach just got home after being gone for 3 months because he's working in 3 bands at this time. And so he's just been rolling from one to the next. And I've gotten to go out with him a couple of times, and Danielle and I'll both corroborate that there's nothing like hotel sex. And, going to visit them is always, that's one of the secrets, I would say for sure.
Oh yeah.
All
I
right.
mean, we go out on the road a lot. Things have definitely changed since back in the day of going out on the road. That was a whole different situation.
Yeah.
But we still go out quite a bit. I mean, I think Barb, you and Zach have a rule also. We try not to stay apart longer than 2 weeks. That's like our rule. 2 weeks, and then we have to either I go there or he comes home.
Right. Ours is
Wow.
3 weeks,
I
but
can't.
lately it's been longer than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know I said that when I guested on your show, but Zakk has a lot of energy. Like, I remember the first time I saw him live, I went with Jack Osbourne and we kind of went on a double date to Ozfest.
Oh,
And
fun.
Scott, he worked the stage, then he worked the entire main floor, then he worked the entire mezzanine, then he worked the entire balcony, then he worked the entire second balcony. And I was like, how does
Yeah.
this guy have so much fight in him? But he's in amazing shape.
It's
So
it's unbelievable. I mean, he lives in the gym, but other than that, I mean, he just plays guitar 8 to 10 hours a day, whether he's on a stage or sitting in the kitchen. He just, I don't know where he gets the energy from. I wish I had a little bit of it, but it's very commendable, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't know what I would do with a mal super mellow Zakk. I don't know that person.
Right, right.
He's
And
always
and
moving.
Daniela, the first time I had met you guys years ago on a photo shoot, you and Gilby, and I remember like
Yeah.
the second I walked in your house, there was an open garage door, and I smelled my favorite smell, like the smell of gas and oil and rubber and leather, and I'm like, oh my God, you have knuckleheads, and there's a pile of knuckleheads sitting there, and he's like, well, they're not all mine, and then you were like, we have to do the show, and like you had to sort of split us up because I could sit and talk bikes and guitars all day long.
Oh no, I know. You and Gilby both bikers. You still have to go on a ride with us at some point. There's going to be a really cool ride you should jump on with us too. Pappy and Harriet's. It's
Yeah,
a
I mean,
it's a
I
chopper
wish I
fest
could
that's
go.
coming up in September.
I have a bit of bike news, sad bike news. So I went
Oh
to
no,
Cedar Sinai Hospital for a doctor's appointment. And when I came out, I saw my bike lying on its side on 3rd Street, and
no.
an old lady backed into it. So I was just like, oh, okay, it's just cosmetic stuff. It won't be that bad. The insurance company did an estimate, and they said it's a total loss because it's a Ducati and
Oh
everything's
Oh
custom.
no.
no.
So I am without bike for the moment.
Wow. Well, you have till
Uh,
September.
True. All right.
To
So
Zak's a
figure it
big
out.
I'm gonna.
But
biker.
yeah, I remember meeting you. I think it was the Gene Simmons magazine launch, Tongue, right? Was that it? Was Davis
I
Factor shooting it?
you know I thought it was maybe I thought it was a Frankie B shoot, but this maybe my memory. But Davis Factor definitely shot it, and I was still assisting. I was his digital tech, and then Gilby cracks open a case, and I go, "Oh my God, you have a Zematis?" And he goes, "How do you know what a Zematis is?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, I tracked Tony Zematis down when I was in college, and he wanted like $2,000 for a guitar, which was like." Back then, that was when like a Les Paul was 600, so this was a lot of money. And he's
Right.
and I'm like, I've never seen one in person, and he couldn't have been cooler. He's like, here, play it.
Do you know
Um,
that Tony Zamatis, I don't know if you know the story of him, but it's really quite interesting because when Gilby first learned about Zematis guitars, he had seen Jimi Hendrix play it, and the Stones, like Ron Wood, would play it, and so Gilby coveted this guitar for so many years, and then when he got in Guns, he contacted Tony Zematis and said, "I'd love to get one of your guitars." And Tony and his wife answered him, his wife Ann, who's so lovely, and said, the only way Tony makes a guitar is if he meets you in person and decides that he's going to make you a guitar. So you have to come to our home in England and have tea with us, and then Tony will let you know if he's going to make you a guitar. And so
so
he
cool.
did that. Gilby went and met with Tony and Ann, had tea with them, and then afterwards, Tony said to him, "Okay, I'm going to make you a guitar." And he made him about, I think, two of them, and then I ended up buying him two more. And from that I found at a collector in Japan, and sadly Tony passed away a few years ago, and now those guitars are worth a fortune. You can't even touch a
Yeah.
Tony guitar, an original Tony guitar, for, gosh, I think they're like from the 50s to $100,000.
Yeah.
I think I know of one that's about to come up for sale with a pretty good provenance, but we'll talk about it in private.
That's funny.
Okay, yeah.
Um, yeah, just a friend of mine's dad had one new. He was roommates with Ronnie Wood when he got the call to be in the Stones.
Oh wow. Oh wow, that's
That's
amazing. Yeah,
incredible.
Gilby's gonna
Yeah,
want to hear about that.
but I don't want to speak out of turn, so I'll tell you another time.
Okay,
So Daniela, it's funny. I was talking. Do you remember Lisa Klein?
of course.
So
The Lisa
Lisa's
Klein boutique on Robertson.
exactly. So Lisa's a dear friend of mine, and she shut her stores, but she's moved on to buying for other stores and then doing personal kind of high end personal styling. And I
Right.
told her that you were going to be on the show, and she says, "Oh my God, I have this client that will wear nothing but low-waisted jeans, which can't be found. So I spend half my life hunting down and buying vintage Frankie B's." I thought that
That's
was
Oh,
kind
so
of
that's
cool.
funny.
hysterical.
Yeah,
I have a
that's funny.
habit
Um,
of
Yeah,
doing
Church
that
Store
too.
was one of the first stores that I started in.
really,
Yeah, it was
I love Lisa.
there was like about 5 stores that I started with, and it was Fred Siegel on Melrose,
Hmm.
Traffic in the Beverly Center, Lisa
Yep.
Klein on Robertson, and then there was a couple there was a store called Slave that's no longer there in Venice, and yeah, those are the first few stores that I started with.
It was good because Fred
Jigsaw,
Siegel and
Melrose.
Lisa. Oh, Jigsaw, yeah, because
Yeah.
Fred
Oh,
Siegel and Lisa
yeah.
were kind of the arbiters of culture and fashion, in
Oh,
those days. Like if you had a brand that broke at Fred Siegel, you were kind of off to the races. Hard candy, cosmetics, nail polish broke because of Fred Siegel. It's like where all the forecasters went. So
that's
Daniela,
right.
if you would
That's right.
tell me
Yeah.
tell me a bit about the origin story of Frankie B, its rise, its sale, and what the whole experience was like for you.
Oh, wow. Okay. So Frankie B really started from I saw, this is so funny, but I saw an old photograph of Led Zeppelin where Robert Plant was standing in front of the plane and he had the tightest jeans on that were actually also made out of the thinnest fabric, the thinnest denim possible. So you could totally see the outline of his situation. And I was like, that is the sexiest looking jean I've ever seen. And they were low. The picture was taken sometime in the 70s. And I thought, well, I want to wear my jeans that low. I want sexy jeans like that. So I attacked my closet. I took my closet, got some of my jeans out, started ripping them apart from the inseam and lowering them and making them tighter. And I would wear them out like that, and I would get stopped everywhere I went. And I'm kind of a slow learner. I'm a slow burn. It takes me a minute. You have to like clobber me over the head a few times. So finally, I was at the mall one day, and I ran into that actress. I don't know if you remember her, Laura Flynn Boyle.
Sure.
I, I was at, I think I was at Rampage or something. It's an old store in the mall. And
Yeah.
she came up to me and she said, "Excuse me, who makes those jeans you're wearing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I make them for myself." And she goes, "Well, what are you sorry for? Here's my phone number. Call me. I'll pay you. Make me a pair." And it was like a light bulb moment. All of a sudden, I realized that there would be women out there who want these jeans and who are willing to pay for them. So I came home and I said to Gilby, "You know what? I think I'm going to start my own denim line." And at the time, I didn't know anything about the business. And I didn't really have any of my own money, and I wanted to do it on my own. I didn't want a partner, and I didn't want to go to Gilby for the money either. I wanted to do it all by myself. So I had just done a couple commercials, and I did one. I did a Snickers candy bar commercial, and I was getting residuals. I was signed to Ford at the time, Ford Modeling Agency, and I got a bunch of residual checks in the mail. And back in those days, those residual checks were freaking good,
Yeah, I
not like they are
remember.
now. Yeah,
Yeah.
you'd get an envelope. I'd see this envelope come in from Ford, and there would be like 5 envelopes in there, and they were all stacked like so thick. It was awesome. So
Yeah, that was a
anyway, I took the
great day.
money from that, and I went downtown. I bought an apparel news, and I found local pattern makers, button companies, label companies, zipper companies. And then I went to all the jobbers that are downtown in the garment industry, looked for denim. And then I said, "How do I get more of this denim if I wanted it?" And they said, "Well, you have to go to the mill." "Oh, who's the mill you deal with?" And then I started just doing all the legwork, all the research myself. And I put together a few samples, and I made a hit list. I decided I knew exactly where I wanted to be in the first store I needed to be at because it was so influential at the time, which you commented on was Fred Siegel on Melrose. I knew that anybody that was looking for something cutting edge would go to Fred Siegel on Melrose. So I made a hit list. I had one of my photographer friends shoot the jeans on me with no top on, just the jeans, and I covered them up like this, and
Yeah.
and sent the postcard out to all of my hit list and said, I think these jeans would do great in your store. Let me know if you'd like to see the collection. The collection by the time was one pair of jeans.
Right.
So nobody responded to me, and I didn't get not one answer. And so then I decided I would wear the jeans into the store and see if I got anywhere that way. The second I put one foot in the door at Fred Siegel on Melrose, one of the girls working there said, "Oh my God, where'd you get your jeans?" And I said, "I make them." She goes, "Wait a minute. Are you the girl that sent us the postcard?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Wait right here. I'm going to go get our buyer." He came out and
Was
he
it
said, "Are you
Brett?
crazy?" Those,
Was it Brett?
sorry.
Was it
Yes,
Brett?
it was Brett. Yeah,
Brett and Nina were geniuses. They had the most exquisite taste, and they, just to give the audience a quick background, they broke like Martin Margiela, Jill Sander,
that's
all
right.
these Dries Van Noten, all these designers that no one had ever heard of. And the thing, they were so trusted in the fashion world that forecasters from 6 continents would come to Fred Siegel to see what these guys were curating. Anyway, continue.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. You're 100% right on that. And the stylists would shop Fred Siegel for their photo shoots and clients. So I knew that the finger was on the trigger over there in Fred Siegel. So I knew I really wanted to get in there. So he said to me, "Are you out of your mind? These jeans are illegally low. People's pubes are going to be sticking out." And I was like, "Well, they shouldn't have pubes. They need to wax that shit." And he was like, "You're out of your mind." And the girls working there were all begging him. They're like, "Please, please, please. Oh my God, we want a pair. We will all wear them." And he goes, "Go try them on. If you girls still think when you try them on that we should carry them, then I'll carry them." So the girls tried them on. They came out and they were like puppy dog eyes at him. And he said, "Okay, I'll tell you what. I'll take 10 pairs of them. I'll try them." And I said, "Great. I have them in my car. The only thing is you have to pay me cash because I have to go buy more fabric and make more."
Right.
And he was like, "Are you joking? This is Fred Siegel." I'm like, "This is the way I run right now. I'm a small operation and I'll give you a discount for cash." So he bought 10 pairs. And then that was on a Friday. Monday morning, he called me up and he goes, "Daniella Clarke, get your head out of your ass and go make 50 more pairs of those jeans." And I sold them out. So once Fred Siegel had them, I walked into traffic and the same thing happened in the Beverly Center. And then the next thing I know, it just kind of snowballed and catapulted from there. And within the first year, I sold $50,000 worth of jeans, which I thought was incredible. I had no clue that I was going to sell that much. But the second year, I get a phone call and someone said to me, "Oh my God, do you know that JLo is wearing your jumpsuit on the cover of her album and it's plastered all over Times Square?" I was like, "No." And the label was right on the pocket, plastered everywhere. The next thing I know, my phone was ringing off the hook. I got a phone call from SNL, and they said to me, "We're doing a skit with JLo and Mango, and they're going to be fighting over your jumpsuit. So we need you to custom make a jumpsuit for JLo and Mango with the back cut out because we don't
Oh
want it to
my
bust
God.
open while they're rolling around on the floor fighting over your jumpsuit." So by the first year was 50,000. The second year I was 1.5 million. By the third year I was at 6.5 million, and it just became this whole other animal that I could barely hold on to because for the first year I was a one woman show, and then after that I started adding staff and offices and all this stuff because I was really like just in my garage. So it was crazy. It was a crazy,
Whoa.
crazy run.
Yeah, it
And
must have been
Frankie
like
B,
riding a bucking bronco.
seriously, that's the best description of it. And Frankie B is my daughter's name. And I gave her that name because my dad's name was Barry, and my dad passed away before she was born. So I thought if I gave her his first initial only, people would always ask, what does the B stand for? And that would keep his memory alive. And so she would talk about her grandfather that she never met, or I would talk about my dad. And that was exactly what happened. And so I love that concept. And she's my muse and everything. And so I named the brand Frankie B. And that's pretty much the story of Frankie B now. And back in 2011, I sold the company. And that was kind of, hairy because it was my daughter's name. And so much went into that. Um, and since then I've just kind of been doing all kinds of different projects, and in a full circle moment, by the way, I stayed on the board until 2014 with Frankie B, contractually. So I was still involved till 2014, and after that I wasn't. And then in a full circle moment, I got a phone call from Forever 21 a couple of years ago, and they said, we want to do a collaboration with you for a denim line. So I said, great, can we include my daughter? Because I don't want to be the face of that anymore now that I'm older. I'd rather have my daughter be the face, the new improved version. So, she's obviously like a great talent. She's in Frankie and the Studs. She's the lead singer in a punk rock band, and she's cooler than shit. And
She's so
I
cool.
think
She has such an
she's
That she
incandescent
is.
personality. She's just a reflection of two great parents because she just has a real incandescence, a real light about her.
oh, thank you.
A
So
great
yeah, I just thought
manager.
she would. Yes, and Barb is her manager.
Are you really? I didn't know that.
Fine. I mean,
I was just,
Frankie does. I have to say, everything that has happened for Frankie, Frankie has done on her own. She works her little tail off, and she is incredibly talented. All I do is make a few phone calls for her. She does everything on her own. But yeah.
but it's great. Frankie loves it. Frankie's like, man, that Barb, she got on the phone, she made one phone call, and shit is happening.
A
So
dreamweaver.
yeah, don't look at Barb and discount the innocent, pretty little face over there. It's this is the business
I,
woman.
Oh no,
yeah,
no,
thank
no,
you.
no! Just knowing that you're a mentee of the great Sharon Osbourne, I just that alone, I wouldn't
Absolutely.
mess with you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I learned
exactly.
from the best, that's for sure. Yeah.
yeah, Barb, if you would, will you walk us through your timeline in music?
Yeah,
That
so I from as this is boring as could be, but from as little a person as I was, I always wanted to be an accountant. And then I got to, I used to charm my teachers who had outside businesses, and I'd do the books for them to get hall passes and to get out of school and stuff. And I've always had a business acumen. I am creative as well, but just more so in the business world. And kind of guiding the creative forces around me, And so Zach and I started dating when we were in high school. Actually, we dated in eighth grade at first, but he took me to see the Urban Cowboy, and I wouldn't let him go up my shirt, so we broke up. And then we started going back together in our senior year of high school. And he was out in California making his first record for Ozzy. Got discovered. It was like, total, you know, like the movie Rockstar, loosely based on Zach's life as well, and that he co-starred in. But so I knew when I came out to California, I had worked in a headhunters company in New Jersey, and they needed someone to fill in. So I had a job, but Zach had just gotten the gig with Ozzy, and I had said to Sharon, I'd really love to work in maybe a record company or something. I think that I'm really good at navigating, creative minds and that whole world because I have I'm great with numbers and whatever. And Sharon gave me a list of record labels and executives in record labels and agents and other managers. And I just just like Daniela, I blindly hit them all up and said, hey, I'm moving to California. I would love to, come work in your label or your management company. And it was really funny because the first real bite I got was at A&M Records for the chief financial officer, who just happened to be the head of the Christian Ministries Council of California. And I
What
had
year?
him
What
interview
year was
me,
this?
88, 89. And
Okay.
like right, like the winter in that time period. And I had just moved to California in August of 88. So it was around December 88. And his name was Mike Parkinson. And he said to me, why do you want to get into the music industry? Blah, blah, blah. And I said, oh, my boyfriend plays with Ozzy Osbourne. And I, really look up to Sharon Osbourne. And I think that I could really, do this. And he said to me, Ozzy Osbourne, the devil worshiper? And I had no idea he was the head of the Christian Ministries Council. I was 19 years old. I had no idea. And he goes, what do you think about Ozzy Osbourne and his lyrics? And that was all around the time, too, that Ozzy was in all those lawsuits for the lyrics, with Judas Priest and the PMRC and all of that. And I
All
just
that
said,
BS. Yeah.
yeah. And I said, Ozzy is like the most amazingly loving human being, and it's all just a shtick. I mean, he wears the
That's
biggest cross around his neck I've ever seen. And he was like, "Oh, okay." And I had like 4 or 5 interviews with him, and then I got the gig, and that's how I got in the music industry. But it was just ironic that of all people, he was like this. Major holy roller, and Zakk comes from Ozzy Osbourne, so it almost lost me the job before I even had
this is the first ever heard of a holy roller at any music business, much less in the '80s. Because
Yeah,
A&M,
you'd
I
be
have a bit of a
surprised though.
history. Yeah, I guess. When I first moved to LA, I like didn't have a job. I didn't have a place to live. I was couch surfing, and then I started managing these 2 producer engineers out of A&M studios,
Oh,
and finally, and do you remember Charlie Minor?
I love Charlie Minor. I worked very closely with Charlie.
Charlie was it was one of the only people I knew when I moved to
Wow.
LA. And I knew Charlie was a big hitter because when he'd roll through Chicago, we just would go for it. He'd be like, "You want to go to a baseball game?" We didn't just have 4 seats. We had 4 seats front row behind home plate. Everything you
Oh
went to with
yeah.
Charlie was first class. So I land, I'm
Larger than
staying at my
life.
friend's apartment. Yeah, I'm sleeping on my friend's couch and I call Charlie. I'm like, I'm going to try Charlie Minor. So I call him. He goes, buddy. I go, hey, Charlie, I don't know if you remember me. It's Scott Nathan. I work for so-and-so. He goes, buddy, meet me at Vince Neil's house. And hangs up the phone. And I'm like, Vince Neil from
God.
Holly Crew? I don't know where Vince Neil lives. So I called this kid I went to college with who grew up in Beverly Hills, who's a big metal guy, big metal fan. And I go, do you by chance know where Vince Neil lives? He goes, yeah. He lives on PCH at Big Rock, where he lived back then. And I go, I'm picking you up. We're going. He goes, we're never going to get in. I said, we're getting in. So I pick my friend up. We drive to Vince Neil's house, ring the doorbell. Vince freaking Neil answers the door. And he's like, hey, who are you guys? What do you want? And I go, we're friends at Charlie Minor's. He's like, oh, you're friends at Charlie? Come on in. And I think we were there for about 48 straight hours. And that was like my
Oh,
intro.
I'm sure.
And Charlie was such a legend that everywhere you went, there would be Charlie and his entourage. And like, I'd be like waiting in line in a sea of people to try to get into a club. And I'd be like, oh, there's Charlie. Hey, Charlie. And he'd be like, come on. He's with us. So I loved him. I miss him. His
Oh,
daughter, Austin, is still a dear friend of mine.
yeah, they're great.
But yeah,
His wife was lovely. I
anything,
loved
yeah.
them. It was really funny because I was only a 19-year-old, little girl, blonde hair down to my waist. And he used to come into the CFO's office and head of promotions. He ran up some huge expense reports for A&M Records and everyone loved him. And he said to me, come hang out, and my boss would come in and go, I just heard him trying to take you over to the other side. You're not going out with him. He was very paternal with me, but it was very funny because Charlie, everyone loved him. He was just a beacon of light and everything rock and roll was,
Yeah, so
just the greatest.
I was basically living at A&M Studios. I was like sleeping in the studio lounges in Studio A and Studio B because these two guys I was managing lived there. And I'm like, I was so broke. I'm like living off the granola bars and the bananas and the fruit baskets in the studios. And finally, Shelly
Oh yeah.
Yakis, who ran the place, comes up to me. He's
God,
like, Nathan, he's like, I know you're living here. And I'm like, do you want me to bail Shelly? He's like, no, I like you. Hang on, stay as long as you are.
what a place that was. There'll never be, our oldest son is in the music industry now, my son Jesse, and I tell him all the time because he always asks me about Charlie Minor and the lure of A&M in the day, and I said there will never be ever another situation like that ever. It was the most incredibly artist friendly label. Everyone got to hang out in the Charlie Chaplin studios. We all did things. They would close every Friday and we would all have drinks together on the upper lot. And it was just the most incredible thing. We just went for the 50th anniversary. Those who ever worked there, no spouses were allowed to go or significant others. It was just people that actually worked there from the inception from when it was in Herb Moss and Jerry, Jerry and Herb's garage. And everyone was there. And it was also a memorial for Jerry Moss as well. And it was the most incredible place in the world. I'm so fortunate to have had that experience being there.
What a magic moment! I'll never forget the afternoon of Charlie's memorial at A&M. And
Uh,
again, it was like trying to get into a nightclub. The streets were full of people,
yeah.
and I swear to God, I actually found myself looking around for Charlie to get me into his own funeral service. Uh, but I
Yeah.
got it. And it was like classic rock and roll, like Al Cafaro speaking, and then John
Oh my
Kalodner's
God.
phone rings.
These
It
are
was a
all
big A&R
people
guy.
that
And
are like,
Kalodner starts full volume, just having a conversation in the middle of Cafaro's speech, and I was just like, "Well, that's rock and roll," you know.
Yeah, that's Hollywood.
amazing.
All right,
Yeah.
so after A&M, then what?
A&M. Then I went over and worked at William Morris Agency with John Marks in the music department, and
Yeah.
kind of got my feet wet working with the rap artists because none of the young white boys were willing to work with any of the rappers at that time. So they're like, "Hey, will you do it?" I'm like, "I'm there." I was like, loving every minute of that, at rolling with Ice-T and Ice Cube, and oh my God, we had Crisscross and New Edition and, just magic times. And then I
Queen
went over and
Latifah.
worked.
Yeah.
Yeah, Queen Latifah. She saved my life on a few different occasions. And I worked with the legendary Carol Lewis, who is still agent to most of those artists, Eminem, Ice-T, Ice Cube, Dre. I mean, all of them. They were all Kara's clients, and I got to work with her, and yeah, she showed me the ropes. And then I left and worked for went to Rod Stewart's management company, Steeple Phillips, which ironically
Oh,
enough, they also manage Gilby. It's just such a small
oh,
world. And
Arnold and Randy. I remember those guys. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah,
That's the weird thing about Barb and I is there's been so many intersections and we didn't even know each other at the time. She
never.
worked at Steve Phillips and they were managing Gilby and her and I didn't know each other. Then at the Rockstar premiere for that movie that Zakk is in, um, I was there because I was dressing some of the people for the movie, and Gilby and I were there. We were invited also, and we didn't
Yeah,
cross paths and we didn't know each other.
no,
And then I did a TV show with Sharon Osbourne called Rock of Love Charm School, where we were kind
yeah,
of like judges on this show,
Oh
and
yeah.
it was me, Sharon Osbourne, and Ricky Rackman, and it was a spin-off show of Bret Michaels' Rock of Love.
right.
Right.
So Sharon and I worked together on that show, and I would sit right next to her while she'd be talking to Barb on the phone in our like breaks. And I didn't know Barb. And
No,
sometimes her and Barb would be talking. I'd be like, "Oh, who were you talking to?" She's like, "Oh, Zakk's wife, Barb."
Yeah.
And we didn't even know each
So
other.
funny. Such a small world.
So
It was
yeah.
really crazy how Daniela and I got to know each other because we have a mutual friend, Allison Burns, who does incredible leather bags and products and all kinds of stuff. She actually does Zakk's guitar straps now too. But she kept saying to me, "You've got to meet Daniela. How do you not know Daniela?" And I'm like, "I've never got to meet her because even Zakk and Guns N' Roses were even managed by Doug Goldstein at the same time together. So
Yeah.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just like
It's so weird.
we never crossed paths." And so Allison kept saying to me, "You need to meet Daniela. You two will get along famously. You know, just you need to know her." And I was doing a shoe line for half a minute, and she's like, "Daniela needs those shoes." So I just called up Daniela and I said, "Listen, Allison said we need to meet. I have this shoe line, these like totally 70s vibed out platforms, and I would love to gift them to you. Would you like to meet for lunch?" And Daniela's like, "Yeah." So Frankie and Daniela and I met for lunch, and we just like loved each other from the minute we met. And it was so funny. I went home that night, and it was during Sturgis, and Zakk was performing Sturgis with Black Label Society, and Gilby's like, you know, the grand poobah of Sturgis. He's like, you know, a fixture there, and it's like wouldn't be Sturgis without him. And so Zakk and I are on the phone that night, and I'm like, "How'd the gig go? How was Sturgis?" And he's like, "Awesome. Guess who I got to meet today?" And I was like, "Who?" And he said, "Gilby Clarke. Barbie, such a cool dude." You know, they had like said hi and bye to each other over the years, but they never had a chance to like actually meet and talk. And I said, "You are joking." And he said, "No, why?" I said, "I went to lunch with his wife today." The same exact day that I met Daniela for the first time was Zakk was with Gilby. It was the craziest thing. But you know, with the rest is history, right? We've been inseparable ever since.
I can't
Inseparable.
remember if I told you on your show, but did I tell you the weirdest gig ever with Sturgis?
No.
No.
Okay, so I get a call out of the blue from this, marketing director in the beauty business who I've worked with for a bunch of different brands. And she goes, "Are you available for a hair campaign for Revlon?" I'm like, "Anytime, any place. I'm always down for a big global beauty campaign and a plane ticket and a bag full of money."
To
So
shoot
she's
it,
like,
right?
"Yes, yeah." So she goes, "We're shooting." She goes, "I need photo and video." I'm like, "No problem. I'll put together a crew." And she goes, "It's in this place, this motorcycle thing called Sturgis. It's in Florida." I go, "It's not in Florida." And she goes, "No, I'm pretty sure it's in Florida." I'm like, "I'm a biker. It's definitely not in Florida. It's in South Dakota."
South Dakota, right?
So she's
Yeah.
Yeah, so she calls me back and she's like, "Oh my God, you're right. It is in South Dakota." And I go, "Okay, what's the gig?" So she's like, "We have a really amazing production designer. We're building like a 1940s barbershop, kind of like Andy Griffith style barbershop." And I was like, "Okay." And they're like, "It's going to be at the Buffalo Chip. Do you know where that is?" And I'm just like, "Yeah,
Oh God.
metal. Yeah." It's like, it's going to be rock and roll. And they don't honk there. They rev their engines to applaud, or they don't applaud.
It's the
So,
best. I love that. I think it's so fun.
It
yeah,
is
so
fun.
we cast a bunch of really cute girls, and then the girls would approach all the bikers and they'd be like, "Want a free beard trim? Want a free haircut?" And then I would take pictures, and then my crew would shoot like BTS videos, and then they'd all get a gift bag with some like beard, hair gel, beard grooming kits, and so like all these like grizzled bikers got like haircuts and got a little detailing in exchange for content. So that was my funnies, and I think Ozzy played that year, but yeah,
Oh, maybe.
that's my Sturgeon story.
Oh,
It's
that's
so
cool.
funny.
That is really
Yeah.
funny. That's great.
So let's jump into the show a little bit. I love, even though it seems geared for women, I love Honest AF. It's a great show, but because I love that
Thank
you
you.
two never shy away from controversy, and I think that you give much needed wisdom to women, and you talk about things on your show that people really only talk about in private.
Yeah. Well,
Tell
that
me
was the
about the
whole
birth of it.
the way the whole thing came about was really during the pandemic. Um, I started to Barb and I talked so much and we were texting each other so much. And one day I just looked at our text thread and I was like, I called her and I was like, "Barb, have you ever just looked at our text thread, how hilarious it is?" Because literally all we talk about is like products and procedures on how to like stay young and stay sexy and
Totally.
all this like silly stuff. I go, what if we did, everyone's doing these podcasts during the pandemic. What if we started a podcast And we were just like really honest about our experiences as we're aging, as aging women. Because,
Hmm.
Barb and I are both the same age. We're both been married for 2,000 years. We both have kids. Both our husbands are guitar players. We have so many commonalities. And I started to think like, we are really privy to a lot of information living in LA that maybe some people in other parts of the country or the world don't know about. Because you know how LA is, everything is like all about, aesthetics and cosmetics and all that stuff and procedures.
Yeah.
Um, but Barb was like, yeah, we should totally do that. And let's also talk about everything that affects us as aging women. Like we can talk about menopause, we can talk about marriage, we can talk about our kids, sex, everything. And so that's how we started it. And it was so crazy because we really thought it was going to just be women that would be listening to us. But then come to find
Mhm.
out when we looked at our analytics, it is split right down the middle. We have just
Yeah.
as many men listening to
Okay,
our
then I'm
podcast.
not alone, and I don't listen
You're
just
not.
because
No.
you're my friends. Because I
Yeah.
have plenty of friends with shows I don't listen to, but I love your show.
Oh, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah,
It's funny. I thought about you two a couple weeks ago. I was at a dinner party, and it was in Santa Monica, and me and two couples were talking. We're all talking about our hormone replacement therapy. And
That's
then I just
great.
bust up laughing, and I'm like, we used to talk about chicks and sneakers and motorcycle boots and cars, and now we're
I
talking
know.
about testosterone and estrogen. It's like so funny.
Yeah. No, it's ridiculous. It's so true. But you know what? It's great that we're having these conversations now because it used to be so taboo and none of us ever
Yeah.
talked about stuff like
Totally.
this. No one ever talked about the fact that, your hormones change and you start to lose your sex drive and you don't want, your husband near you. Even with men are affected.
Yeah.
Their hormones change. They start to lose their
Yeah.
hair. They start to get erectile dysfunction. They start losing interest also. So there's so many changes that you go through in your journey of life, and that's if you're lucky. And
Yeah.
True.
so we thought we should really talk about all that and stop the tabooness of it all, because a lot of women were embarrassed to say that they were going through this change of life because it meant you were old and it meant you were no longer sexy or youthful or significant, and that you needed to go start knitting, which by the way, I love knitting. And I've always knitted since I was young. Um,
That always makes me
but
die laughing. I just picturing her knitting just kills me every time. It just, I don't know. It's very funny
it calms me
visual.
down. I love it so much. But anyways, so we thought, why don't we bring these conversations to the forefront? And I saw recently, I just saw a special that Oprah Winfrey did
Yeah.
on menopause. And one of the things that was said on the show, which I thought was so accurate, is that by all of us talking about all these things and making it no longer taboo to talk about and normalizing it, we're going to be the last generation that suffers in silence. The next generation, our kids, our daughters, their daughters, are not going to have to suffer the way we did. And none of us knew. We didn't know that all of a sudden you start raging and you don't know why. You're just turned into this god awful bitch from hell. But it's because your hormones are plummeting and that there is help out there. Like so many women had suffered and so many men were like, yeah, peace out, I'm out, and divorces were happening and, marriages were crumbling because they couldn't hold it together anymore. And there is help out there. So we thought we should really talk about all this. And then not only just this, but we talk about life on the road, being married to our husbands and how
Yeah.
extraordinary that experience is. And and just our everyday life of being around the things that are so extraordinary that come with our marriages, and also the downside of being married to our husbands, of like, them missing birthdays and anniversaries and special occasions and things like that, not always them having being home for us and missing out on their kids, basically also. And so we discuss all of that. We also talk about current events. We talk about, we have this great segment called Barb's Bag of Tricks, which is amazing because Barb is, besides the fact that she's cool as fuck, she's also the nerdiest scientist you've ever met in
I
your
I
life.
am such a nerd. Totally.
And she knows everything. She is like a wealth of information when it comes to like the chemical compound of some freaking product that I know nothing about, that I can't even pronounce.
Sometimes when
She
I'm talking, I'll look over and I'll see Daniela nodding off, but
yeah, sometimes I'll take a little snooze while
one of
she's
us has
explaining
to be
something.
more than, has to have something to, bore people just a little because she, listening to her and looking at her is overwhelming for some people. So, I have to turn it down and bring us back to, some sense of normalcy.
Yeah, but she's
But
also a raging sexual being as well. And so she brings
I'm
in
a
all her
Scorpio,
little
Scott.
sexual accoutrements.
That's right. We're all birthday neighbors, Scorpios.
Scorpio.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
are there any sort of standout moments that really resonated with the audience that you remember from the show, like a particular topic?
I
I
think
think go
one thing
ahead, Barb.
I remember that stood out, that people really loved. We had Chloe Trio on as a guest, a fellow rock wife who is an unbelievable artistic phenom, all in of it of herself. I mean, she's, singer of a rock band. She's an incredible artist. And she came on and,
Her
she had,
husband's in Metallica. Sorry.
yeah, Robert Trio of Metallica. Sorry about that. And
Oh,
she
right,
had
bassist.
just yeah, and she had just mentioned that, it wasn't love at first sight for her with Robert. And just like, because we really talked about like, I mean, not all of us who are wives to these incredible rock stars were complete, groupie chicks. A lot of us, me in particular, I didn't know who Randy Rhoads was. I didn't know any of the artists that Zakk was, in his world. And Chloe was this like artist living in France, born and raised in Paris, and she had no idea who Metallica was. And she, met him at some art show, and she was just like, it wasn't like love at first sight for me. He was a cute, nice guy or whatever, but and all of a sudden, every music, you know, organization and print, or digital format was all over it. Like Chloe Trio wasn't like dying over Robert Trio, and it was hysterical because it was like, what did you guys talk about on that last week's episode? Your numbers are through the roof. And it was just, Chloe divulging like, yeah, he didn't really do it for me at the time, but turned out he's,
Isn't it funny how
kind of
press
cute.
picks things up? Like I
Yeah.
had Tracy Guns on a few episodes ago, and rather than ask the same old hackneyed questions that he's been asked a million times, I try to think of like a little bit of a different way in. And I just said,
Right.
Tracy, you and Axel lived together in a little crappy apartment on Cahuenga. What was he like as a roommate? And he goes, oh my God, he was the tidiest, most polite, quiet, cleanest person I've ever met in my life. And I was just like, that's a really sweet story because Axel has some dramatic stories out there too, as we all know.
Yeah.
And that all of a sudden, like 5 news articles were written, Axel was an amazing roommate, Tracy Gunn. So it's just, you never know what the lightning in a bottle is going to be.
You
No.
never know. And it's funny because we originally we were going to try and like stay in our lane and just have like all our guests be wives of musicians and musicians, which we've had like amazing guests. Like, we've had musicians like Macy Gray on our show. We've had both our husbands, which by the way, our husbands were our favorite guests because
That
we
might be
did
a
the
highlight.
newlywed game. We did the newlywed game with them and it was off the charts. And Barbara and I were completely drunk because
It's
Zach
amazing.
makes everything sexual when he talks about Barb. And so we decided to do like a side bet. And every time Zach mentioned anything sexual about Barb and I would secretly do a shot. And well, we were wasted within the first 5 minutes of this
Totally
episode. And
is.
so they're hysterical. We've had Glenn Hughes from Deep Purple on. We've had, oh
Sharon
God, we've had
Osbourne,
some Sharon Osbourne. We had, uh, oh my
Nika
God, I can't,
Costa,
Nick,
Nika.
no, we had,
I love her.
no, we had Kathy Valentine from the Go-Go's who just played Coachella also.
Amazing.
Uh, yeah, we've had like amazing guests. And then we've also had doctors on. We've had dermatologists, cosmetic surgeons. We've had, God,
Authors,
therapists. I'm
couple
sorry,
of authors of books.
authors.
We had an
Yeah, we
amazing
had Patty
guest,
Stainer
Tracy
on, Millionaire
Cox, who
Matchmaker. Yeah,
sex therapist, and she's written, what was it, like 18 books on sex therapy. Tracy Cox, her last name is
yeah, she
hysterical.
was a huge hit for us. This lady was
Great
amazing. Her
guest.
name is Yeah, Tracy Cox. She's a British author, and she's written all these books about sex. And then she wrote a book called Better Sex After 50 or something.
Starts at
And
50.
Better Sex starts at 50. And so we had her on, and she was a fantastic guest. If you ever want to go back and listen to that episode, it was great.
I
And
will.
after she was on our show, she sent Barb and I each a big box of dildos. It
Yeah,
was
she's great.
hilarious.
She's also a
Nice.
Scorpio, Scott.
Always a welcome stocking stuffer. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think even though our subject matters are different, I think our philosophies are similar in that, like when I first started doing this show, I felt this tremendous pressure all around me to just to fill it up with celebrities. And finally I just said, listen, there is a finite number of celebrities I know in the world. And even the ones that I know really well, many of them are not going to do some rinky dink startup podcast. And I totally respect that.
right.
So I just figured I would just have people that I find interesting to have a conversation with and hope other people find it interesting too. And
Yeah, because you know what?
some do
Everybody
better
has
than others.
interesting stories.
Yeah, not everyone's an interesting storyteller, which I've learned the hard way. But yeah, everybody
Totally.
definitely
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
stories. So it's ever a learning process. And like guitar, like photography, the path to being good at anything is sucking at it first, and then you just get better and better and better. So I'm still learning. And I want to
Right.
thank you both for being here.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank
thanks
you
for
for
having
having
us. This is fun.
us.
I know you have a heart out, but I'm just trying to think if there's anything. Yeah, tell everybody where to follow you guys.
We're Honest AF show, and that's on all across the board on Instagram and Facebook, and also on YouTube. And Honest AF show is you can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts, really anywhere.
Okay, great. Oh wait, I do have one
Yeah.
question I forgot about.
Yes.
Barb, how
Yeah.
did you get into the coffee business of all things?
Um, actually, there's a guy named Blasco who helps me and co-manages Zakk, and he saw Death Wish Coffee Company, who at the time had just won a Guinness Book of World Records award as the world's strongest coffee. And Blasco blind called them and said, "Hey, I've got the world's strongest guitar player. You've got the world's strongest coffee. Let's do something." And Zakk had
Great
just
pitch.
gotten sober. He's sober 15 years now, but he had just gotten sober, maybe a couple years at the time, under his belt. And so, like you probably know, with a lot of your friends that are sober, they go to another addiction, and Zakk's just happened to be coffee. And so it just worked out really well. And the whole imagery, and Zakk, of course, has this whole Viking lure that follows him around that he's, embellished. And so he used to actually say, before we even had the coffee company, Valhalla Java and good morning. Like that was his way to say good morning. So Valhalla Java became the brand, which, I can't take any credit for naming the brand of coffee. I named Black Label Society, but I didn't name Valhalla Java. That was all Zakk. And it's just worked out amazingly well. And we feel really great about the product. It's highly caffeinated, organic, fair trade. It's fully recyclable, and it's been a great thing for us. We love it.
Great. I pour a lot of espresso into my face every day, and it's tough to wake me up. So I'm very much looking forward to
Yeah.
trying it.
Yeah, we have a 5 pound bag of beans headed your way as we
Oh
speak.
my God. Thank you so much. So kind. Ladies, thank you so much for taking the time out. I know we had some
Sure.
scheduling bumps in the road, but I'm glad we finally got together. And
Yes,
let's stay in radio contact, and I'll let you get back to your
Yeah.
day.
for sure.
Thanks,
Thank
Scott.
you.
The Bad Decisions podcast was produced by Brock Workman of Her Dat Entertainment. Be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts so you'll never miss an episode. My book, The Big Book of Bad Decisions, is available for purchase wherever books are sold. A special thanks to today's guests, Daniella Clarke and Barbaranne Wylde, for joining me today. I'm your host, Scott Nathan. Thanks for listening.